Hello, welcome, lovely souls, to the Voice podcast, the voice of integrity, compassion, and empathy. So, this is going to be quite an interesting podcast, if I do say so myself. And this is about the rise of the feminine power and toxic masculinity. So, get a cup of tea and just take some time to sit and listen and allow a perspective to be seen, to be heard, and connect into your body, connect into your heart, and allow yourself, give yourself the permission to possibly see a different perspective, to also call out the wisdom that is your heart, for it's your heart that knows. The mind, the subconscious mind, is what holds on to belief systems, BS, bullshit, whatever you want to call it. And I like to deem it as bullshit because that is calling out the nonsense that's in our heads. It calls out the illusions, the untruths. So sit tight or relax, and here we go. I want to talk about the rise of the feminine and what comes with that when we start to see light on the masculine and the toxicity that is being really shown up to be seen, to be heard, to be witnessed, and to be processed. And as a collective of individuals, of humanity, is how we go from here. So when I talk about the rise of the feminine, this is in all of us, male and female, okay? This is the unknown, the hidden, the unseen that is rising up. And she stands for emotions, for equality, for justice, for unconditional love. And she will call out the bullshit that we are carrying individually and collectively. And sometimes it's often easier to see it in this massive stage that is the world, of what we're seeing out in the collective. And it's often easier to see that than it is for what's inside of us, because we're living in our world so much that we don't necessarily know it. And we are certainly living in a very busy white noise world that really is stealing our mental energy to really give ourselves that time to seek within, to create space so that we can breathe, so our minds can breathe, and allow ourselves to see what is it that is happening, what is coming into my mind, what is creating this thought process. And so we can start breaking patterns. And I call it about being conscious, having conscious conversations, to be conscious of our subconscious mind, of how our patterns and how our experiences, and just being brought up in this world from nurture, but also what we've inherited in our unconscious body, in our blood, in the water, in our bones. This goes so deep that we don't even know it's there. Okay. However, our subconscious mind plays out for 98% of our thoughts and our actions. So we think we're in control. We're not really. So becoming more in control is about becoming conscious. Why we think and why we feel and the way we act and the way we do it. Okay. That is consciousness, and that is emotional intelligence. And we are being called to raise our consciousness, to raise our intelligence in an emotional way. And I have done quite a few articles and podcasts on what is occurring in us individually and collectively. And when I talk about emotions, this is one aspect of toxic masculinity, how men are conditioned to see emotions as a weakness, unless it's anger, of course. Anger is really unacceptable for male because that shows strength. Fucking well done. Brilliant. But what you're doing is you're crushing the intelligence and the depth and the feeling that is in men. And that's the feminine power. To have emotional intelligence goes beyond strength and bravo and ego, okay? And from a mother and from seeing and witnessing clients who haven't been able to feel safe to express their emotions because it's deemed as unacceptable for men, you can see the pain that's in their bodies. And no wonder anger comes out, because anger is like the tip of the iceberg of all the other emotions. It's a frustration, hurt, shame, guilt, fear, loneliness. It holds so much. And when we don't allow or give ourselves, men or anybody really, the safe space to connect their emotions, we're really doing them a disservice and ourselves. And this is something that we really need to address. And I will come into that at some point. I've given myself a little bit of a list here because it's so important for us to start having these conversations about what is happening. So within the news that we've got coming through, we've got Adolescence, the Netflix movie that's I actually haven't watched yet. I'm led in I'll find the right time for it, but I didn't want my thoughts or anything else to be swayed. Neither do I like jumping in on a craze as well, that I have a bit of resistance to that. So adolescence is coming up, which is, from what I can see and discern from it, it's all about social media, getting the full brunt and blame for. We've also got a huge amount of misogyny going on. We've got femicide, women just being murdered. I just saw something recently, it was about 114 women in a certain part of Australia, just purely women being murdered. And then you have female genital mutilation that happens in the UK as well. Okay, we think, oh, that might just happen somewhere else. Doesn't really affect us. It's happening in the UK. We have, interestingly, we have a president who's actually been found guilty of sexual abuse, sexual assault. Wasn't quite deemed rape, which has even confused his own lawyer. But yeah, but now in office, elected after that. So what is happening here? Okay, someone that has been accused and found guilty is still elected. What are we saying to our children, to ourselves, that that's okay? That you should now be in very powerful position, which we are now seeing how that is unfolding, and how women's rights are being pulled back, the whole pro-life, where again, this is about men trying to control women and their bodies. We have got a lot to work through as humanity, and we cannot be looking and going, well, it's not affecting me, so I'll just leave it. No, because it's probably affecting somebody right next door to you. They are most likely being abused. Yet nothing is done about it because it's just accepted. And this has been going on for thousands of years of women being abused, being raped, mutilated, manipulated, used for money, for sex. This has been going on for thousands of years where man believes women are their property. No. And I always say from my experience too, how when I came out with my abuse, how people preferred to believe it didn't happen, that I was just hadn't got it right, because it was uncomfortable for them. So what does that say? We'd rather pretend it wasn't happening because it's too uncomfortable. Because actually, if I decide and actually choose to believe that, I'm going to have to take some action. But that action's too uncomfortable for me. So I'm just going to pretend it didn't happen and leave it like that. What message is that saying to the abused, to other potential people that could be abused? What are we saying? And I have written many articles. There's one about she's a 5-pinter. And it's like, it's just a blasé kind of comment about, basically looking at this woman who's in her power of singing her heart out. But this derogative comment was, she's a 5-pinter. And that's my naivety, didn't even know what that meant. It meant I'd have to have 5 pints of beer before I'd shag her. It's like, fuck off. She won't even want to shag you. Yet there's this whole kind of bullshit that let's laugh about this. That again, some woman that's beautiful in her power, really like exercising her gifts and her talents, that you just want to bring them down and, put her right back down to her value is how shaggable she is. And this is coming from a parent of boys and girls. What message are you giving to them? So when we look at everything that is going on in this world, and it is being shown to us, this the light is coming up to us to step up and to act with conviction, with unconditional love, rather than fear and separation. This is calling us up as humanity to evolve. It's calling up all the bullshit that has happened for thousands of years. And we're at this very pivotal point of what do we choose? Do we continue to choose these cycles of inequality? Or do we choose to step up, to find our voices, to come from a place of our hearts? So we have a lot to do, okay? And this isn't about blaming social media for one. Now, social media, as we're going to talk about adolescence, okay? Yes, that has a role to play. It really does. And it's really interesting because when you actually look at that and go, well, actually, regulations could be brought in really quickly and very promptly and could have been there at the very beginning, but they're not. And they're not doing it. So ask the questions, why are they not doing it? Why are there no regulations? Why are they allowing pedophiles to be tracking down people? Why are they allowing Telegram groups of 70,000 men talking about how to rape their wives, their sisters, and not any other women? Why is there Andrew Tate being out there on Spotify, basically a sex trafficker and a rapist? Why has he got a voice? We need to really be asking, what is the depth and behind this? Why has it continued to be happening? And I'll continue with the line of adolescence, which is what really showed me different aspects that we need to get and look into. And it isn't just social media. Yes, social media could be done and that could be sorted out very instantly. What we've also got to look at is the adolescent's brain. Okay. When that brain is the most beautiful, innovative brain that challenges the status quo. And those brains are here for a reason. They're here to allow humanity to continue to evolve because they look at what is happening and they challenge it. That is meant to happen. They're supposed to look at the boundaries and push those boundaries. Question what those boundaries are. Are they rules? Are they regulations? Are they actually serving us? Are they out to the highest good? And this hugely innovative. It's hugely creative. And we need those brains. Yet what is happening with our systems and especially our schooling systems and how we have been taught as in generations that we just keep passing down the baton in terms of how we are conditioned to be is actually shut up. Just do as you're told. The way it is. Sit down, you will be told what to think and what to do. Okay. And if at any point you're trying to come back at me and say, no, that doesn't sound fair. That's not fair, miss. That's not fair, sir. You know, they're told as rebellious and disruptive. They may simply just be looking for a voice. Maybe we need to start looking at creating a culture that we talk about in business, being able to have a space of safety to be able to communicate and connect. Maybe we need to start this at schools. Maybe we need to start seeing our children as equals. Yes, they need to be shown healthy boundaries and how to explore in different ways, but they're equal. So interesting how we will talk to children like shit, right? We will. We'll shout. We'll scream. Do as you're told. All this sort of crap, you know. Yet an adult suddenly appeared in the same room. How would you talk to that adult? Would you shout and scream at them exactly the same way to get them what you wanted to do with no other explanation? No. If you are, that's really interesting. But we wouldn't. So we need to start looking and recognizing children as equals. Yes, we're here as guardians to support them and to grow and to be their highest and most creative selves. And I certainly am very conscious of that, of how I talk to my children is like how I would want to be spoken to. And this is always about equal and respect. Maybe equality comes right back down how do we talk to our children, how we treat the daughters, how we treat the sons. Is there a different expectation of that? You know, what was I reading the other day? If some girl came out with a dollop of poo with a candle in it as a cake, they should be sent off for some psychological study. Check. Whereas men will go, boy did it, our boys will be boys. Which interestingly has been said back to me, oh, boys will be boys. What does that mean? Because boys will be boys. Boys will just be having a laugh. Boys will just be having a misogyny kind of comment here and there. When does it become from a joke to something actually serious and someone is meaning it? And it's really interesting how you have Trump coming into play. And now all of a sudden it's given like a ticket of like, this is okay. This behavior is okay. I don't have to hide in shame anymore with this shit that I'm feeling. I'm actually going to be quite a little bit more expressive in how I feel and my viewpoints. And I will bring up now that the other day, I had a phone call And instantly I could tell that this wasn't quite right. But the first comment was, don't judge me. And one more try. Okay. Because judgments do come up in our heads. It's just how long do you keep that judgment in your mind until you go and look at it from a different perspective, maybe. And basically it ended up just saying, well, actually, I'm a dirty bastard. And I said, well, at that point, I said, well, you need to go and have go and get some professional support on that one, really. What actually makes you think you're a dirty bastard? And then it hung up. And at that point, I was like, there's a real sense of, am I allowing that to be a sense of violation for myself? And then I thought, no, I'm not going to allow that to be a violation of me. I'm not going to let that seep into my body, okay, in my whole energy field. I'm not having that at all. I'm not going to be a victim. Fuck it. And when I've decided of that, I was like, actually, I didn't have pity. What I did have was a weird sense of compassion. I'm thinking, why? Why do men think that's okay to phone a woman up and say shit like that? I've had somebody talk about wanting their cock massage. Why? Why do you think that's okay? And I know that myself as a pattern of a female has taken that discomfort as my own. See, this whole people pleaser bullshit that us younger women tend to have, that's out the door. But I know that I would shrink myself for fear of attention and fear of that discomfort. And I've seen it a few times now, even saw it in a night out, how some perv was just hanging around, and I'm just like, how some people would just shrink themselves. And interestingly, became even more interested in those people that were shrinking themselves, whereas myself was just like big fuck off vibes, right? And he would not look at me. In fact, I managed to stare him down at one point because I'm like, I know you. I can see right through you. Fuck off. Okay? Fuck off. And which kind of makes me think and leads me on to is that why do men do this? What do they fear about the woman? How do they fear? What do they fear about the feminine? And I think they fear their power. And so what does a woman mean about being in her power? Well, she can strip the ego down. She can look at the bullshit right in the eye and tear it down. It will tear down the ego. And that's the power of the feminine. She just like raging water ocean. She'll just knock shit down that doesn't stand the test of time. Okay? It will not tolerate shit. So women will pull that down, that ego. And when a man is heavily attached to his ego as his own self-worth, that can be extremely threatening. Because beyond the ego and all that attachment self-worth, they fear there's nothing else underneath that. They fear ridicule. They fear being laughed at and feeling small because I guess they believe that the power is looking big and strong is their power, right? So I'm not mocking men, so please don't think this is what's happening. I'm trying to show the bullshit that is in our belief systems and our conditions. So when I look like I'm mocking men, I'm not mocking men, I'm mocking the bullshit that has been stereotyped and socially conditioned. for us and all are taken on. Okay, so let that be quite clear. So women can strip down, the feminine can strip down the ego. It happens for women too, but I generally don't tend to stick to the ego too much. The ego for female has a tendency to not think you're good enough, that you're not worthy. So that ego isn't arrogance, it's actually just keeping you small, which is real bullshit too. But also the male, the ego, the woman that they can strip that down, they fear that ridicule, which is interesting because the person said to me, don't judge me. So they obviously don't want judgment or feel shit. And they're probably carrying a shitload of shame because judgment and shame they're kind of attached together. And, when you fear judgment, you fear persecution. So there's a huge amount of shame hanging around there. And again, this could be another layer that's sitting underneath that anger, that ultimately that anger cannot be expressed and they don't know how to express it in themselves. So it's really easy, much easier, but to put that anger onto somebody else, to portray that onto somebody else and say it's them that's making me feel like, they probably got mother wounds as well because the mother probably got bloody abused or is carrying this subconscious, unconscious trauma where she's disassociated from the masculine because she doesn't trust him. And this actually comes through the mitochondria, it comes through the feminine line. So the mother may well be disconnected from her son and or over mothered the son too. So they're carrying like mother wounds. They haven't really seen the feminine really truly in her power. Often you see a woman too much in her masculine energy because she has to be there because she doesn't trust any fucker. So she's literally got walls of protection around her. So she's not emotionally accessible. And that emotion wasn't accessible for that young child who then didn't think they were good enough or also picked up the vibes that men are assholes, men are bastards, So it's, hell, if you're given a label, might as well have been charged and convicted already, might as well just be it anyway. We have to start really understanding what's going on underneath these layers that think that that's okay and that behavior. And the more we can have these conscious conversations without judgment, which I appreciate is really hard, we bring the light on. So we don't hide all these behaviors in under earth anymore, which will keep springing up. We haven't got rid of it. It's just under the frigging carpet and it's getting really fucking lumpy, okay? And we need to be able to call all of this out. Why are you behaving like that? What is it that's going on? Okay, so I haven't got shame, you're not judging me. Okay, I can express this. Okay, now we're coming from our bodies. We're opening up our throats. We're allowing our emotional intelligence to come through to be able to really understand why we think and why we do. Okay, this is really, really, really important for us all because we will just continue and dragging our sorry asses on round and round this circle and this cycle. And we are here to make a massive change. We are going through such an evolutionary peak of being able to go, what do we choose? Do we choose love, unconditional love, or do we choose fear and separation? We need to start connecting. And I also wanted to go back into the adolescence aspect for our children and the schooling systems and how they're not set up for creativity. They're not set up to challenge the status quo. Imagine if we had communities and schools that were really set up to not just tell what to think and to squeeze them and crush their spirit so they can go off in their suit and tie in a couple of years' time and do the same shit over and over and over again. And then we wonder why we've got a frigging mental health crisis going on right now with huge suicide in teenagers. And then one in four, I think every four out of, one woman. It's like 75% of suicide of men. It's huge. Again, which comes back to emotional intelligence and being able to express it and to understand. So, this, we need to look at fostering communities that support children to understand who they are, to connect into their bodies, to find this emotional intelligence that's within them. And with that becomes creativity. And when you're in your most creative, you're in your most intelligent. Okay, NASA did a study on this, and it's basically looking for geniuses and innovation. You need to be creative. And actually, 98% of 5-year-olds showed that. And once they got to 10, it went down to about 12%. And that's the schooling system. The child didn't change. It's just the way they've shut down part of themselves. So we need to look about reconnection to ourselves and reconnection as communities and as people. And imagine if we had that going on at schools. Imagine if we had communities that were really supporting children. Imagine if we got more funding, okay, and we started having youth centres and bringing in older adolescents that have gone through this real challenging time of being a teenager, and they come back in as a role model. So rather than having the same age peer groups where they just go down rabbit holes, you've got somebody that as a role model that they can look up to that isn't their parents, because you're not going to listen to the parents, but you need 19, 18, 20-year-olds. We need apprenticeship programs. We need something where it isn't just about sitting on your arse and just being told what to think and do until their spirit is dead. Okay, and if they want to try and question something, they can't because they're not perceived as equal. This is our problem. And that becomes a shitload of anger because they can't express it. So it'll come out in a way where they can do it. Okay. And when you don't feel heard, when you don't feel seen or valued, where do you think their self-worth is? And like I say, it goes kind of two ways. It kind of goes out into anger and goes out into, crime, gangs, abuse, it can go into suicide. We are failing our youth. We have been failed, and we need to now start seeing that and start making those changes. So governments can do things, but let's not just always put our power on governance and wait for them to come up with something, because quite frankly, they are shit. Okay? They're shit. They don't care. Okay? It really isn't. So we need to start claiming back our power by taking aligned action. Okay? So however that is, we need to be starting to get right. One, governance can sort out social media. That could be done. That's so easy and should be done. And we need to question why isn't it being done, okay? We also need to be looking at getting funding, getting communities, getting together, creating groups where they can look at design and technology and bring their innovative minds into things that we really need as humanity and in societies. This is an incredible time that we must nurture, not suppress. All right. And then we also need to be looking at what we call the cost of living scam that's going on right now, where we are being pushed from every angle in terms of money. And so the more and more this is being squeezed upon us, the more time parents are worrying about money, having a roof over their head, and being able to feed their children. So they're not present. They are having their own mental health crisis. They're having burnout and overwhelm. And, also probably in a job that doesn't really serve them either. So they're really fucking miserable too, right? So they aren't present. So they're not present there for their children. So they're not being able to be there and support them either. So we have got multiple things going on that need to be addressed. And we can only do this when we start to really become aware of it and not trying to blame other things. Okay. So, and the other thing is that because we're so goddamn busy, we're not in a community anymore. We're all trying to do our same things in our own houses, whereas before we would have had communities supporting one another. They say it takes a village to raise a child. So we've become so separated, so disconnected from ourselves, from each other, communities. It's we have a lot to shift and to change and to come back to. And I believe just the more we're aware, or the more we can change. And I think that's probably quite a lot to sort of sit and to have a ponder, really. And I'm just thinking what else I can sort of share, but it really is about we need to start having these emotional conversations, these intelligent conversations. We need to be able to recognize why we do what we're doing, why we behave in that way with our children, because children are like a beautiful mirror. They will reflect back us all our bullshit that we have been taught. And a lot of the children that are coming through aren't going to be taking our crap. So we are the pattern breakers. We are the ones that need to become conscious of all of that, see how we were parented, recognize it doesn't serve us, and through love, not pass it on to our children because they're here to do something even greater. They're here to be the leaders of our world, of the world that we actually want, that is of higher emotional intelligence and consciousness and empathy and compassion, integrity, authenticity. This is what they're here for. Okay. So we have got a bit on our shoulders to work with. But as soon as we know it's there, we can start working through it. Okay. Rather than feeling like we're just clashing all the time. And I guess the last thing is really when I talk about the rising of the feminine. And it goes back to how this power of the feminine can strip the ego down. And as the great words of a master chef, as women of a certain age, isn't that beautiful? Yes, it's a certain age where women have given up being the fucking people pleaser and will no longer tolerate any shit. Okay? That is also known as menopause. It's also known as our second spring. So us women that are hitting that certain point of time, going, often it can be a whole load of symptoms that's making you feel like shit, but actually it's trying to tell you step into your power. Where all of a sudden intolerance, frustration, mood swings might not necessarily just be an estrogen drop, may well be the fact that you're carrying a shitload of female trauma and it's time to stop it. It's time to break that pattern. And your unconscious body that's carrying it through your DNA, your mitochondria, will be calling out for to be seen, to be heard, and to allow the fucking rage to rage, okay? But consciously. Because underneath that rage is a voice of self-love that you may never have heard ever before. But women aren't allowed to feel angry. See, it's quite interesting how the dynamics of men is angry, that's okay, that's a strength. Women, you can't be angry. But underneath that anger is self-love, it's self-worth, going, I deserve better. And you fucking do, okay? You really do. And let that rage come through and allow yourself to do it consciously, all right? Because it's alchemy. It's fire. It's purifier. So think of purification with fire. It's that heat, that inflammation, which is ultimately probably the cause of all the symptoms that we put underneath menopause, which is inflammation, okay? It's trauma, it's abuse, and I see it in my clinic. I've seen it in my own body, but I've also seen it in clinic how their mother's rape and abuse was in that person's body. It comes through. So you won't even be aware of what you're carrying, but you'll see it in physical symptoms. All right. So I just wanted to bring that in because this is a fundamental point of as women come into their power and find their voice, it's so strong, okay? And it comes from a place of unconditional love. Love for Earth, love for our children, love for humanity, wanting something better, something better. And this is why the world is falling or seems to be breaking down, because the power of the feminine has been suppressed. It's been abused and it's been quietened. And the feminine is like the glue. She's the wound healer. Even through her pain, abuse, betrayal, she has the potential to alchemize that, to not stay in hate or fear. She has that potential to alchemize that and return fear back to love, to bring what was led, the lowest frequency, the same frequency as shame, back to gold. This is her power. And this is why humanity is where it is. But let it be known, she ain't staying small any longer. All right? Feminine is rising and she's tolerating no bullshit anymore. So if you want to stay in fear, if you want to believe in the separation and the illusion, that is that. If you want to continue to be in abuse and inequality, then you will be stripped down. Okay? And this is awakening in both men and women. Women, I feel, it's even much more powerful because of the womb and the heart connection. There's a huge amount of sacred wisdom and power there, which will be another podcast and episode even. And we are just at the very beginning of this. We are literally, it's coming up to the surface. All the earthquakes, the seismic shifts that are physically happening in our earth are also happening emotionally and mentally and energetically. Okay, so this is really about being true to yourself and going back to what can we do about it, and recognize that when you change your inner world, you change the outer world. You cannot change the outer world unless you've done the inner work. Because we are like these little sequins on a disco ball. The greater we are creates the bigger impact, but it comes from us within first. We cannot change anything until we do change ourselves. Then we become a beacon of love, of joy, of peace, of freedom, of abundance. We become an inspiration to others. We become leaders for others. Okay? We can't wait for somebody else to make a change. We do it in ourselves first. And this is our power. Okay? Awareness and conscious choices. These This is our power. I see it time and time again, and in myself as well. Is that when you step up and become the leader of what you choose to be, of compassion, empathy, it just is contagious. Okay, I see it with a mum, how she still has been doing this work, and within only like 4 treatments, the daughter is going, "You're different, mummy. What is it that you're doing? I want to be involved." I mean, when I shared that with my mum the other day, I just burst into tears. I think that's fucking gorgeous. How exciting is this? We're breaking patterns. A woman that has never been able to put herself first and her boundaries and love for herself is starting to love herself. And what she's doing, she's showing her daughter that too. So her daughter doesn't have to go through the bullshit and the learning because she's learnt it from her mum. How powerful is that? And so, yeah, we have a lot of power. We have a lot. Stop giving and buying into media and all the press that has us believe we have no power. We do. And we are on this journey of self-sovereignty and claiming back our power. And the first step of that is breathe, pause, ask the question, why do I think this? Does it make me feel good? No. If it's not love, joy, or peace, which is your sovereignty, that's what you're born with. That is what we are. If it isn't that, then ask yourself, why? Why do I feel like this? What's the layers? What's the fear that's sitting as the root of this? What's the illusion to that fear? What is it? And start to unpick fear and our belief systems and our patterns. And then we start seeing the shift change. That becomes the seismic shift. That becomes the miracle when we start looking and changing our perspective. Because all of a sudden, our truth shifts. And then we start to become more curious as to who we are. What am I? Who am I? When I start to allow my ego to quieten its voice, like, well, I've been so attached to this, but actually that really isn't me. And it really isn't serving me. Who am I? Oh shit, who the fuck am I? Like, actually, when you first do this process, you're like, there's nothing there. God, what am I? Then you start to really have the curiosity and the courage to really know who you are. And as the oracles of Delphi said, and Yeshua, know thyself. And know that each of us are mirrors, all mirroring stuff for us to see. Like life is like one big house of mirrors, and mirrored things back to us for us to see what old belief system am I carrying. What do I want from that person? Oh, I want more love. I want more acceptance. Well, that's what you give yourself. More love, more acceptance, unconditional love. Okay, this is what we all need to come back to, which is unconditional love. That's our truth. Because I've always thought love and fear are separate, opposite each other. Like everything has a paradox, right? Like light and dark, night and day, masculine, feminine. You both need those polarities to exist for each other to exist. And I've always thought love and fear were like those, but it wasn't. It's been shown to me that love, unconditional love, light, exists as one. It doesn't need a paradox to exist. It simply exists. And actually more the opposite to fear is trust. And like a sliding scale, grace is what slides us between fear and trust. Which way are we? And to know that fear is actually the illusion, yet it's so heavily ingrained in our bodies that it feels like it's the truth. We have a thought, we have an emotional response, then it comes back from our body and our brain goes, oh, it's definitely true then, because I felt it. But it came from the seed of thought first. And then you have to break that seed of thought pattern. And then you don't get the emotional attachment. Then you break that pattern. Then you choose what it is that you actually desire to feel and be. That's when you are in your power. So to wrap this up, and I can't quite see how long I've been going, but I think it's been a good hour. So if you're listening to this point, this very moment, thank you so much for listening, but not for me, for you, because you've taken out this much time to listen, to observe, to ponder, to question. And in some subconscious way, you've chosen you. You've chosen your power. You've chosen to step up and break patterns that you might not even known you were in. So I celebrate you and thank you again for that. And I can see how this is where the shifts change when we step up and influence and inspire others. It's interesting I said influence, and it's how that's deemed in social media. It's about inspiring, and it's not about just changing behavior. This is about inspiring people to live to their heart. They can feel it, but they don't know why. But it feels real and it feels true. And that future feels completely unknown, but it feels right. And that's trust. That's the grace. Moving away from fear. So thank you. You're incredible. I love you. If any of this has triggered in you, if any of this has made you feel judged, unloved, devalued, know that that's the belief system that you're carrying within you, because this has come from a space of love and a huge desire for humanity to shift, to change, to evolve, and know the great power that we are. And when we talk about power, it's not to have over somebody else. That's just a misunderstanding of what power is. Power is something that you harness within you and never force upon somebody else or try and take from somebody else, because you can never really have it. So thanks again, and feel free to leave any comments. And if you're really inspired by what I've been talking about, then you can look into more articles that I have on the infinityhealthhub.com, where I've got She's a Five Pinter, Dear Pussy, I Speak for You When You Fear You Cannot, I Release the Rage, Toxic Masculinity with the wonderful Ken Anderson, where we talk about the emotional intelligence there and how shut down. So yeah, lots of things to look at. Guided meditations to help you move these old belief systems and start creating the ones that you actually desire. And know that that's the power that you have. You can do this. So yeah, thank you once again, you lovely lot, and big love.